Chapter 16. You slept with Queenie? It wasn't a question. It was a statement that suddenly shattered the quiet of the autumn afternoon. Martin James sat on a boulder high above Plas Wern Las. Immediately below him, he could see the low, pitched roofline of the house, which was enfolded in the landscape. To his right lay the long curve of Cardigan Bay, where a couple of tankers made their way across the blue-green sea. He and Samantha Merriam had climbed up from the house about 20 minutes earlier, and he hadn't expected this sudden intrusion. She now sat beside him, her head cocked slightly, waiting for an answer. She wore a blue rain jacket over a check shirt and jeans, and he had just been thinking about how attractive she looked when her question threatened to change the mood of the whole afternoon. Well? If you knew, he managed after a while. Why did you bother to ask? I didn't ask. Then why do you need my confirmation? Because I wish you hadn't. I wish you hadn't taken advantage of her vulnerability. She told you that's what I did? Not in so many words. What exactly did she tell you then? Martin turned towards Samantha for the first time since she'd asked him the question. And as he did so, she tucked a stray wisp of black curly hair behind her ear. He thought again about how attractive she was and how he'd wished for a different kind of mood for the first day after her father's funeral. He'd asked her if she wanted to go for a walk up the hill with him in an attempt to get to know her better, to assuage the inevitable sadness and the upset following her brother's outburst at the graveside. Now, it looked as if he'd unintentionally blown it. He had never expected Queenie to say anything to anyone about what had happened between them a few nights previously. Certainly, he'd had no intention of saying anything himself. And now, here it was, a topic for open, if difficult, discussion. Well, what did she say? None of your business. Why did you bother to bring it up if you didn't want to talk about it? There was a pause, and when Samantha spoke again, her voice was quieter. I'd like to be honest, she said. I didn't want you to go on thinking I didn't know something when I did. Well, thank you. But strictly, is it any of your business? Queenie made it my business. Did she? Martin felt a little lost. There was a pressure behind the conversation he didn't quite understand. You have to understand something about her. Queenie only sleeps with men she doesn't like. Well, thanks very much. I mean, she's almost pathological about it. Is that a warning? Samantha Merriam got up. A dark cloud began to move across the sky above them, but she didn't take any notice. Listen, Martin. Queenie is acute, hypersensitive. Not everything she thinks she sees is actually there. That doesn't mean she's not very vulnerable. She is. And sometimes she gets her antennae crossed. You mean she didn't see a man in a dark suit with shoes and no socks lying on the floor of the drawing room? Where did you get that from? That's what she told me. That's why she crept into my bed. Did she? Look. What the hell? Now we started, you might as well know. I was reading. I was going through some of my aunt's stuff that I got from the solicitor. I must have fallen asleep with the light on. The next thing I knew, it was dark and there was somebody next to me. It was Queenie. She was upset. She told me she'd seen something in the drawing room. Oh, so now I see. You comforted her as best you could, despite the risk. What risk? I told you. Queenie's afraid of emotional connection, especially with men. She's afraid of getting hurt. So she sleeps with them? Doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. She sleeps with men she doesn't expect to get close to. That way she's less vulnerable. Then there's no harm done, is there? It's the wrong thing to say, and Martin knew it. but he felt tired of defending himself. Samantha Merriam got up immediately and began to move quickly down the hill. "Samantha!" Martin followed as best he could, but she was already moving fast and reached the path before him. "I'm sorry." "What for?" "For upsetting you. Perhaps I'm used to being upset." She walked quickly past a protruding rock and reached the stile in the wall that separated the common land from the cultivated fields. I listened to her. I felt sympathetic. Then, when it happened, I couldn't help it. "I'm sick of it," Samantha said. "I'm sick of men who take and take without realizing the consequences of their own actions." "You mean your father?" "No. For the moment, I mean you." Before he could even reply, she was gone, hurrying down the path that cut through the fields above Plas Wern Las. Chastened, Martin James followed her slowly down. It was later the same day. The large, pink dining room of Plas Wern Las shone in the candlelight. There were candles in large wooden holders on the mantelpiece and on the refectory table, which was laid with a white cloth and blue china plates of different patterns. Martin James was standing looking at one of the framed mandalas on the far wall, the one near the window. It was a large blue circle bordered by red and green scallops that seemed to move against one another. "It's one of Queenie's," Marion Keene said as she came in. She was wearing a purple skirt of some crushed material and a blue top. "She is really quite talented." "Leave off, will you?" Queenie said as she came in behind Merriam. She was followed by Samantha Merriam, whom Martin had not talked to since their encounter early in the afternoon, and then by her brother Simon, who changed his black suit for a white t-shirt and jeans. "Queenie found the dinnerware as well," Marion Keene continued. "She went to an auction in Carmarthen. It's all bone china, different patterns but the same colour. I thought it was brilliant." "That's all what was left," Queenie said, choosing a place in the middle of the table. Then she sat down without saying anything more. "Where's David?" Samantha Merriam positioned her brother towards the top of the table, immediately opposite her, and then sat down herself. "I persuaded him to bring the tureen in," Queenie said. "I know he hates cooking, so I thought it might be good for him." "I'll go and help." Samantha got up and disappeared into the kitchen, while Martin chose a place lower down the table. "I wanted to do this because it's the first chance we've had to be together since the funeral," Miriam Keynes began, "and our first chance to welcome Martin officially." "Corn casserole," David Young said bluntly as he came in carrying a large tureen with decorative handles. Samantha followed him, carrying a large platter of brown rice, which she laid on the table next to the tureen. Then they both sat down. "I've been trying to find something useful to say about death," Miriam Keynes continued, "but I'm afraid it escapes me. I would like to say something cyclical, something about death, birth, and renewal, but I'm afraid I haven't quite come to that yet. Here at Plas Wern Las, despite our location, despite our apparent good fortune, I feel we are sometimes dogged by a sense of an impenetrable past, a thicket of confusion." "And ghosts," Queenie said. "Thank you, Queenie." Marion Keynes was obviously not grateful for the interruption. "I mean, here especially I am aware of the weight of it, of unsolved mysteries that reach beyond the obvious. I do not only mean what happened here 50 years ago. I know we are capable of dealing with that. I trust in us, in our practice, both individual and personal. I know that we can overcome that particular legacy. No, what I want to talk about is deeper than that. I love this house. I love its associations, and I trust in its future. And despite the recent sad occurrence, I do want to go forward. Tonight, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank Martin James for letting us be here in the present and for giving us the chance to see the potential in the future. Finally, I want to share with you a quotation from Sogyal Rinpoche. What, then, is the view? It is nothing less than seeing the actual state of things as they are. It is knowing that the true nature of mind is the true nature of everything. And it is the realization that the true nature of mind is the absolute truth. After Marrankeen's finished and sat down, there was a brief silence, and then they began to pass around the food and eat. Martin helped himself and tried not to look across the table to where Samantha was sitting. He hadn't seen her since their separate returns to Plas Wern Las earlier in the day, and he didn't particularly want to see her now. He felt embarrassed because he had said the wrong thing. But there'd been no avoiding another meeting. He'd already accepted an invitation to dinner, and there would have been no way he could have easily escaped. He was still trying to decipher the exact meaning behind what Marion Keynes had said. What did she mean by the view? Was she trying to contrast her view of how views were, for instance, with the more conservative philosophy of his Uncle Paul? What were the unsolved mysteries that reached back beyond the obvious? For him, it was as if his experience in Plas Wern Las was divided into three distinct phases. There was the house now. There was the house of his Aunt Henrietta's murder, about which he was still learning. And there was the house of his childhood, that dark, unsettling place, which was proving the most difficult of all to process. He saw himself sometimes in the back seat of the old Woolsey with a rug over his knees. He could smell the leather and the rain. Why was it always raining? I don't think you can get away with not reacting, Samantha, Simon Merriam said suddenly. Despite what you and Marion might think, the truth is our father left most of his money to a windmill company, so he couldn't have thought much of us. I don't think, Samantha began. Marion looked directly across at her for the first time since the meal had begun. She didn't get a chance to finish. I know you're going to tell me I shouldn't be so upset, that it's not all about the money, Simon Merriam said. But I can't help it. I am upset, and it is about the money. What was he thinking about, really? It was all right for him. He bought that house in Bristol years ago for 20,000 or less. When he sold it for $500,000, he was sitting pretty, wasn't he? He could afford to invest in windmills and dabble in hives and live in the old rectory. He'd made his money. Did he spare a thought for us, the ones he'd left behind? He did leave us something. He didn't forget us entirely. He might as well have. He'd made his money, Sam, off the backs of our generation, and I want him to pay for it. Too late. He's dead. David Young spoke from the other end of the table. You keep out of it. This has nothing to do with you, Simon Merriam said. He was my father. I'll say what I like. And if I want revenge and his money, both at the same time, that's my affair. I'm sorry if you're upset. I really am, Queenie said, turning towards Simon. And you'll have to excuse me if I say you're expressing a very partial view of the universe, you are. So you had an expectation that wasn't fulfilled. So he disappointed you, your father, and you're not going to get his money. So now you're just about in the same boat as the rest of us, aren't you? Welcome to Project Reality, if you pardon my French. I suggest we all try and calm down, Marion Keynes said from the top of the table. Queenie, will you help me take out the dishes? Of course I will. But I'm not finished yet, am I? I need to tell him. Tell Simon. Expectation, do more harm than good, mate. And the main point anyway is not what happened to your father's money, it's what happened to his life. There's an open verdict, don't forget. Which means no one really knows what happened. And if I'm right, which I more than suspect at this point, that bleeding detective hadn't finished poking round, has he? Marion Keynes spoke after a while. You mean you're convinced that Parker Merriam was murdered? I mean, none of us knows what's going to happen next, do we? And all I know is it's getting very creepy.